Hi there and welcome back, and in this lesson we're going to be talking about CBT or cognitive behavioural therapy and how you can use this with happiness. So let's start with talking about what CBT is. Now, CBT is a type of therapy that focuses on the contents, if you like, of a person's mind, and it's based on the notion that our thoughts are the basis of our beliefs, our actions, and therefore the quality of our lives. And to be perfectly honest, I think you'd struggle to tell the difference really between CBT and NLP a lot of the time. And while traditional psychotherapy requires often really lengthy sessions, often with a lot of emotional draining and gnashing of teeth, CBT is really quick and it's really simple. And not only is it effective one-on-one with a client, it's also been shown to be effective via email, online and in the written word as well. And a lot of people have even experienced success with CBT by using it just on themselves directly. What's more, having been the subject of several studies, it's now considered to be really effective. So much so, in fact, that it's one of the most popular forms of therapy these days over here in the UK. And in the UK, it's the therapy that's most prominently promoted and recommended by our NHS, the National Health Service. So what does CBT have to do with happiness? Well, as I mentioned to you just a moment ago, CBT states that our thoughts lead to our emotions, our actions, and the quality of our lives. For example, if my overriding thinking about myself and my life is positive, then the quality of my life is probably pretty good overall. On the other hand, if I'm continually putting myself down, complaining and finding fault with everyone and everything, well, I'm quite likely to be fairly unhappy, aren't I? Now, here's the critical thing, okay? As human beings, we have the ability to change our thoughts. We can take control of our thinking and become custodians of our thinking and our thoughts. Now, if you're new to this concept, that can seem a little hard to believe. I get that. I too grew up thinking that my thoughts happened to me randomly. Didn't think that I was in charge of what I thought. It certainly seemed, at least, like my thoughts just kind of happened without my consent, and that I either suffered through them or I enjoyed them, depending on the content. In fact, I was a fairly troubled teenager, okay? I left school when I was 15 after the school system said that they didn't want me anymore and recommended basically that I be committed. I underwent loads and loads of psychological testing before being essentially thrown on the scrap heap by the system, and I genuinely thought that there was something very wrong with me. However, my troubles as a young man are what led me to study the mind and begin to understand it. And the point is, I think, that I do have the ability to choose my thoughts. My process for thinking may be very different to a lot of people. However, I can and I do have control of my thinking, just as you do. Now, I'm not saying it's easy to become a custodian of your thinking, okay? It takes awareness and it takes some effort. You have to accept that you are in fact responsible for your happiness and your state. And I've learned that it can be done, and if I can do it, so can you. And of course, tools like NLP and CBT can show us ways of doing that and make the whole thing a little bit easier. So how does CBT work? Well, it uses mindfulness techniques, cognitive restructuring, journal writing, and hypothesis testing as some of its core techniques. CBT practitioners and their clients work towards changing clients' lives, and in the mindfulness practice that's taught in CBT, the client seeks awareness of the contents of his or her own mind. Now, the aim is not to actually empty or clear the mind of all thought as it is in other forms of meditation, but rather it's to become more aware of the thoughts that are passing through the mind at any given time. And through mindfulness meditation, the CBT client begins to seek out the thoughts that actually lead to unwanted emotions and behaviours. If you'd like to learn more about mindfulness meditation, by the way, look for my courses on that topic or just drop me a line. Now, when the client spots a potentially harmful thought through their mindfulness meditation, he or she then uses their newfound awareness to craft an affirmation that would then counter that thought. For instance, if the person becomes aware of thinking a thought such as, "I will never be good enough," for example, and he or she might then develop an affirmation that takes into account that person's actual successes in life. And that's because, in order to be effective, the mind must be able to believe the new affirmation. So an affirmation that the client would choose in order to counter the thought of "I'm not good enough" might be, "I'm a good mother, a loving wife, a great dad, or a good friend." Now, with journaling, the CBT client writes for a little while every evening, looking for trends in their thinking throughout the day that's just been. It's really useful. Okay, so hypothesis testing means that the client isolates a particular and a frequently recurring thought, such as, if I ask for what I want, people will be angry with me, and then works with that particular thought. The CBT client then tests that belief by asking for something that they want. It might be that they ask for a raise and then realize that whatever the answer is, yes or no, their manager didn't in fact become angry with them. And then cognitive restructuring is the work of kind of weeding out those beliefs that cause unhappiness in the first place, and then creating new beliefs to replace the old ones. For example, if you have a belief that life will always be hard, you might want to practice believing that life was meant to be joyful. And whenever you notice that you're having the thought that life is hard, you can then quickly replace it with your new affirmation that life is meant to be joyful. And if you practice your new belief for long enough, of course, you might just find that life actually becomes more joyful for you. Now, that's a very quick intro to CBT, and I'll be releasing a very comprehensive and a full course on CBT very soon. But for now, let's move on to the next lesson, and I'll see you there.